Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Cobern, and today's episode we're going to be talking about NFL Draft Bust Analytics. And this is a series of videos I wanted to do for a little while, just getting into prospects that became busts. And when I say bust, they're prospects that were typically drafted in the top 10, the top 20 even, where there was very, very high expectations, and they ended up pretty much becoming nothing at the NFL level. A lot of times just kind of flaming out. And I wanted to do this series because there's lots of misconceptions about the limits of analytics and like what analytics should mean, and this is what analytics should be for, and analytics should, like, there's a lot of people who talk about analytics but they don't do analytics. They don't actually put analytics into practice, and not only that, they tend to form opinions about why players failed when analytics could have given you that answer. And a perfect example is with a guy like Dion Jordan. And a lot of the other players I want to cover in this type of series of videos is on NFL Draft Bust. Players that were busts, but it was so evident based on their data that they should never have been top 10 picks. They should never have been that type of guy. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely NFL draft busts that just became busts and they hit every single analytic data point you can imagine. There's always going to be players like that. Analytics is not a perfect science yet, anyways. But there are cases, there's certain types of players where the data was screaming at you, don't draft this guy that high. Don't do it. And those are the types of players I wanted to highlight, because while analytics definitely doesn't get every single player right 100% yet in terms of the general analytics that most people use nowadays, including myself, but it definitely picks out the guys that are not going to be very good, or at the very least not become very successful players. And I figure, you know what, let's do Dion Jordan. And just to familiarize you with some of the metrics we're going to be talking about today, at least the analytics we're going to be talking about, we're going to look at his production data, specifically market share production. Market share production, for those that aren't familiar with that term, at least when it comes to defensive players, is where you take an individual defensive statistic and you divide it by the team total statistic. So for example, if Dion Jordan had 9 tackles for loss on a team that had 90 tackles for loss, and Dion Jordan had 10% tackle for loss market share. But what you do is you take that number and you compare it to every single defensive end / 3-4 outside linebacker since the 1989 NFL draft class, and then boom, you have a way to see this is where most of the Pro Bowlers tested in terms of their production. This is where most of the All-Pro guys tested in terms of production. This is how some of the starters tested in terms of production, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have athleticism data, which is pretty self-explanatory, but there's 3 types I use. Explosive lower body strength score, which takes the vertical and the broad jump measured against mass density, and that, of course, is compared to every single defensive end / 3-4 outside linebacker since the 1999 NFL draft class. The speed score takes into account the 40-yard dash measured against mass density, weight divided by height. And then the flexibility score is the short shell / free cone measured against mass density. We're also going to look at his NFL production, which is the same as the market share production at the college level. He only had 1 season to qualify based on my data, so we're only going to look at that 1 season. But those are all the things we're going to be looking at and discussing, and then ultimately come to the conclusion about why Dion Jordan just didn't make it. Why didn't he work out? So we're going to get to a couple of those things next. So the first place to start with Dion Jordan is when it comes to his production. He had a 37.27 solo tackle market share score, a 43.12 sack market share score, and a 47.13 tackle for loss market share score. Based on my data that goes back to the 1989 NFL draft class, neither his solo tackle sack, or TFL market share meet the bare minimum requirements for multiple All-Pro or multiple Pro Bowl defensive end / 3/4 outside linebackers. Basically meaning that if for Dion Jordan to become a multiple Pro Bowl / All-Pro type of defensive end / 3/4 outside linebacker, he would have to become an outlier. He'd have to become something that has never happened since 1989. So it's over 30 years almost. There hasn't been a defensive end / 3/4 outside linebacker with this type of production to become a very special player. That doesn't exactly sound like a top 10 pick. I'm just going to throw that out there. And then when you get to his athleticism, he had a 25.37 explosive lower body strength score, a 87.02 speed score, and a 74.17 flexibility score. Now, while his speed score and his flexibility score are definitely things that probably got him drafted, because his speed score was All-Pro level, his flexibility score was at least Pro Bowl level, so they had that stuff to point to. When it comes to his explosiveness, though, there has never been a multiple All-Pro, let alone multiple Pro Bowl pass rusher with a 25.37 explosive lower body strength score, because the bare minimum threshold for that particular metric point is 30.89 out of 100. So not only would Dion Jordan have to be an outlier when it comes to his production at the college level, he would also have to be an outlier with his explosiveness coming out of the college level. You're starting to see a pattern here, right? And then when you actually get to his NFL production, at least the one season that I have on him where he qualified, meaning that he had enough starts, if you will, to kind of qualify. In terms of the terms right here, MSA PER is solo tackle market share percentile compared to NFL defensive ends. MSSPER is sack market share compared to defensive end peers. And then MSPD PER is pass deflection market share compared to peers. And TPER is total impact score, which takes all those scores, the solo tackle, the sack, and the the pass deflection, and then it adds all those up and gives you a total impact score. And based on Dion Jordan in 2014, he only had a 27.93 total impact score, which essentially was below average, that season, significantly below average, in fact, because it was a 27.93, and that was out of all of the defensive ends that qualified for the 2014 season in terms of production. So in conclusion, when it comes to Dion Jordan, just to kind of wrap everything up, there was always this prevailing narrative with Dion Jordan that he was playing out of position, that he wasn't really a defensive end / 3/4 outside linebacker. He was really just a linebacker. There's all this kind of stuff. But the bottom line is when you actually look at his production, you look at his athleticism, in order for him to become a multiple Pro Bowl / All-Pro type of player, he would have to become an outlier. He would have to be the first guy to do it since 1989. At least 30 years, almost 30 years. There's never been a type of guy like him to become a multiple All-Pro / Pro Bowl player. And if I had told you, if you were a GM and I told you, okay, this is a guy you're considering to draft in the top 10. Not only that, you're going to trade up and give up a lot of draft picks to get this guy. This is a player, just so you know, was below average in every single defensive statistic. He didn't hit the solo tackle market share production of a Pro Bowl player, or even an All-Pro player. He didn't hit the Pro Bowl or All-Pro thresholds for a sack guy. He didn't hit the Pro Bowl All-Pro thresholds for a TFL guy. And not only that, his athleticism, while he does have some positive marks, he has one mark in particular where there's never been a multiple All-Pro / Pro Bowl player with an explosion score that he put up since the 1999 NFL draft class. If I told you that, you probably would not have drafted this guy, let alone give up all those picks to get this guy. And people are going to make whatever narrative they want to make about Dion Jordan. That it was character that killed him. That, because a lot of people say that now, like, oh, well, he was just a terrible character guy. And it was drugs, and it was this and that. And yeah, he did get popped for drugs, mainly because he was trying to get bigger and stronger, because he was, again, that explosion score was pretty not that great. So it kind of makes sense why he would try to get bigger and stronger. But whatever way you want to say it, I'm telling you that from the get-go, from the very beginning, his production data and his athleticism data was indicative of someone that you draft day 3, let alone UDFA. Like, he did have some positives in his profile. He did have very good speed. He did have fairly good flexibility for a man his size. But if you have production like this, where there's no Pro Bowlers with this type of production, there's no All-Pro players with this type of production, and you have athleticism traits that are, again, some good things, but one thing in particular that is just not that great. What do you do with that type of guy? Like, do you draft that guy, top 10? Like, you just would not do that. And that is why Dion Jordan, to me, is one of those types of busts. He's one of those types of NFL draft busts that it was very clear from the very beginning as a data guy. Like, sometimes in data, we can have a debate about a guy. We can debate about a player, and we can, go over his film, and, he hits every single number, but you don't think he's going to be a good player. I'm open for that debate. I'm open to debate a guy when you don't think the numbers say what they say. But when the numbers say that this guy is not going to be good, and there's never been this type of player to become good in the last 20, 30, almost 30 years, I don't see that as a time to debate, especially for a guy who's being taken in the top 10 of the NFL draft. The top 10. You have to be losing your mind to take a guy like that in the top 10 based on his production analytics and also based on his athleticism metrics. So, again, you can think whatever you want to think about Dion Jordan as to why he fell and why he's a bust and all this kind of stuff. But I'm telling you that based on data, based on analytics, based on if I was actually in a room with a GM and, in that draft, I would say I probably wouldn't quit my job. I probably would quit my job because I wouldn't have a job. But I probably would say, if you do this, I'll quit because it's ridiculous. This should not happen. And for all the people that tell me that, well, if you're so smart about this, if you're so good at this, you can predict certain things, then why are NFL teams, using this? Why aren't they calling you? It doesn't matter because the fact of the matter is data says what it says. I let the data speak for itself. And in this case, the data speaks very loudly for itself. And you're right. Why aren't NFL teams doing more of this? Why are NFL teams drafting players like Dion Jordan when, based on their data, there's never been a single player like this to become a special player? So, again, my name is James Cobern. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.